Well, it's really depressing. I mean, people have this idea that oh yeah, okay, there'll be riots. We'll build it all back. No, cities don't come back after riots like this. I mean, Detroit, for example, used to be the gem of the United States of America. It was our most beautiful city. It was our richest city. Detroit had more millionaires than New York City. You can look it up online. Do the Google search for. They were trying to get, I don't know what year it was, 1968 Olympics, 1964 Olympics, something like that. And they did a little, short video. Here's Detroit. All that auto money, beautiful, beautiful mansions. Black people in Detroit were not only the highest paid in the United States, but in the entire world. But there were riots. The powers that be backed down. It destroyed the city. Does anyone think of Detroit? I don't know, the way you think of Paris? No, of course not. It's over. The main way you meet people who grew up in Grosse Pointe these days is living in other states. People in Detroit.
Just to second that, I mean, I went to Detroit to cover the Democratic debate last summer, and they were undergoing something of a renaissance for like the fifth or sixth time, because they've been going through a renaissance every 10 years, according to city planners and politicians. But they really did revive the center of the city. But as you say, it was 50 years after the riots or rebellion, depending on which side you were on, I guess. And there were all these little gems that from the 1920s and 30s that I never saw before growing up in the Midwest and passing through Detroit. And the city completely collapsed. Yes, and we're seeing a dozen cities that are being destroyed now. Somebody tweeted out, which I thought was kind of clever and perhaps insightful, that, New York is being protected because that's where the rich and powerful people live. The implication being that the media thinks, Ferguson, who cares? Minneapolis, who cares? Oh, this is fun. But New York, that's where we live. Let's protect New York. You protect the things you care about. It is our country isn't being protected. It's really depressing. Mobs are a disaster. The last thing you should do is capitulate to a mob. It doesn't just peter out. It emboldens them. They go on and on and on. I think we're really in very bad straits right now. Doesn't take that many to end it. Something, if you want your headline and your controversy, though I think I said something like this in my book, Demonic, whatever the circumstances, that shooting at Kent State in the middle of all of the anti-war protests, that pretty much ended the riots. I mean, they were going on constantly, city after city, university after university. Couple rioters throwing stuff at the cops. National Guard called in. Nixon had nothing to do with it, incidentally. It was under the control of the governor back then. In that particular incident. The National Guard thought they were being shot at, and they shot back. And I think it was 4 kids were killed. It doesn't take much for the forces of civilization to defend itself, for these cowards to go running. But there is no pushback. There has been no pushback for, many. I mean, Antifa, Mitt Romney's favorite organization, and Marco Rubio. Remember the wonderful things they had to say about Antifa after Charlottesville? They've been around for a while. They have been riding high since Trump has been president. That wonderful, wonderful tweeter, one of the few real journalists in America, Andy No, out in Portland, has been documenting Antifa. I mean, it's basically an arms takeover of Portland, of Oakland. When I spoke at Berkeley last fall, 2,000 Antifa were there.
to try to block me and beat up people coming to see me, including liberals. It was just students coming to see me. It went off without a hitch, largely because of my own private security. But nothing has been done about this. It's been going on for 4 years, which is why, if you've noticed, I've been a little testy with the president on Twitter. He's the president. I keep hearing people say, oh, he thinks this is going to be like 1968 and Nixon running on Law and Order. Okay, but see, Mr. President, the difference is when Nixon ran on Law and Order, he wasn't president. He wasn't responsible for the riots that had taken place. These are, I mean, yes, Democratic governors suck. Fine, yes, true. So do Democratic mayors. Totally suck. You'll get no argument from me. But Donald Trump is the president. He should have federalized the National Guard the moment he saw that police precinct on fire. Maybe before then, but no later than then. And instead, we just keep getting, I mean, it's like he's taunting us. He's just going to keep sending out these aggressive, intemperate tweets, but do nothing.
Yeah, I think you've really cut to the heart there of the political question facing us in 2020, because I've been talking to people who say they're convinced this is going to elect Democrats. In fact, there was a very humorous tweet, if you can find any humor in this situation, of someone standing outside a store begging looters not to take anything because they'll just re-elect Donald Trump if they go into these stores and start committing acts of violence and so forth. But I said, look, a lot of it depends on what Trump does. And I think he did the right I think he did the right thing in the early hours. You know, there was some provocative tweeting after that, but of course, I think every tweet he has gets amplified and multiplied much further than, you know, if there was any provocative intent in saying the shooting leads to looting or the other way around, it was simply to warn people not to loot. It didn't work, so now he's going to have to do something much more aggressive, and we have to see what that is. But I'm looking around right now at the leaders in this country, and do you think Joe Biden is really an alternative? Is Joe Biden going to bring peace and healing to our land? Remember, he launched his campaign on a lie about Charlottesville. He now says he's in the battle for a soul of the nation, or whatever his campaign slogan was. And now he says he wants to bring us all together, but he's stuck in his basement in Wilmington. I think he came out today to go somewhere in Wilmington, you know, the site of some Wilmington protest, which, I mean, is Joe Biden really an alternative, or are they going to replace him with someone else? What is the choice facing the voters this November?
As enraged as I am at Trump, Joel, you are not going to get me to defend Joe Biden. No, of course, he's a laughingstock. He's senile. He's in his basement. But I'm with you. I think I'm with you in what you just said. In general, Republicans have done very well historically for, a good 50 years now. People want order in their neighborhoods. I mean, there's this one, I just want to take a short detour here with, I would like people to look up this video. Maybe you've seen it. I've tweeted it a few times. I've now watched it enough times, told enough people about it. I think I can tell you about it without starting to cry. It upsets me so much. That sweet black lady in Minneapolis who's crying and describing how the first night she watched them come running up the street and they smashed into the dollar store, and I forget what the other store was, like a grocery store or something. And she's so sweet. And those are the people that the police are protecting by taking criminals off the street. And the rioters are destroying her life. I mean, I think...
Yeah, let's do that.
I think you and I probably have safe places to go home to at night. A lot of people don't. And they're the ones we keep fighting to save our country for. This all happened under Trump. I don't think he gets away with saying that he's the law and order guy when it happened under him.
Our producer is whispering in my ear that we actually have that clip. Should we play it? Let's go for it.
Oh, yes. Oh, but you have to see her, the poor dear.
Go for it. We'll have to imagine. Go for it.
They went straight to Office Max, the dollar store, and every store over here that I go to. I have nowhere to go now. I have no way to get there because the buses aren't running. These people did this for no reason. It's not going to bring George back here. George is in a better place than we are. Last night, I'm going to be honest, I wish I was where George was, because this is ridiculous. These people are tearing up our livelihood. This is the only place I could go to shop. And now I don't have anywhere to go.
We watched on Fox News as people literally walked into that Office Max in Minneapolis. There was, at one point, they rolled a safe out of the store, and then some thugs surrounded the Fox News reporter, who then left. But it was just amazing to me, and you see these well-dressed people going into these shops, black, white, whatever color, and coming out with crates of Corona, which I thought was rather ironic given the coronavirus pandemic. What did you loot? You looted Corona. It's
Louis Vuitton. It's heartbreaking what's being done to the most vulnerable people in America. I mean, this coronavirus, the shutdown for 3 months is nothing to compare to what's been done in the last 4 days. It is nothing. And to just be getting law and order tweets from the president instead of sending in the National Guard, no, he doesn't get to run on law and order, particularly when he idiotically listens to, the genius Jared and push that First Step Act to do what? Release criminals. I knew this would happen. I did not think it would happen under a Republican. I certainly didn't think it was going to happen under Donald Trump.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second. I wonder where the goodwill has gone. Maybe some of it is still there, but Donald Trump, and I actually gotten a lot of heat over this last week for saying on a radio show that Donald Trump had gone further than any Republican president in reaching out to the African-American community, which I think is true. So does that win him any credibility in this situation where, once again, to my mind, he did the right thing? He was very quick to express empathy with George Floyd. He got the FBI and the DOJ involved and Attorney General Barr, and all he got for that was grief. And now the Democrats like Susan Rice are telling him that he's to blame because he didn't listen to Colin Kaepernick. I joked that maybe she thought it was a YouTube video or something. Does this build anything for Donald Trump, or does this break down? I mean, where does this leave him in terms of his outreach to the black community?
All, the president that did more for African Americans than any other president was Richard Nixon. He desegregated more schools in the South just during his administration than any other administration before or since. He was pedal to the metal, whether he was a United States senator or as president. He was read the true history of America and civil rights and the Democratic Party in my magnificent book, Mugs. He did it. And Trump has been good for African Americans. If your idea of an African American is, Kim Kardashian and Kanye, if your idea is that woman we just heard crying, he hasn't done a thing. He hasn't done a thing, and he would have done something. What is so heartbreaking and what does fuel my anger here is that his campaign was so magnificent. The promises he made, if he had kept his promises on immigration, on building the wall, on infrastructure, on bringing manufacturing home, oh my gosh, employment in the black community would have exploded. These rioters we see now and we saw back in 2014, what we seem to have on our hands are a lot of idle, young, high testosterone, young black men. Antifa is a separate issue. They should just go straight to prison. And it's a big thing on the liberal networks like MSNBC. They haven't really talked about it recently, but this campaign of theirs, block the box. They want to not allow employers to ask if you've been convicted of a crime, because unfortunately a lot of African-American men have been convicted of crimes. But, I'm sorry, you can't drive a Brinks truck or work at a nursing home if you've been convicted of a crime. You know what you can do and where you can make a lot of money? Is in construction, on a construction site. All of the American men, because you can't hire, the government isn't going to be hiring illegals, building the wall for one thing, and keeping that promise at the same time, building bridges, building tunnels. You would have
And then they can get married because they're making money and they have health insurance and they have pensions. It could have been such a renaissance for the left behind African Americans and white Americans, I might add. I mean, the left thinks of the working class as if it's only white. No, it's white and black and Hispanic too.
Well, let me push back just a little bit on that. I mean,
left behind.
I just spent a little time yesterday in my day off reading Victor Davis Hanson's The Case for Trump, and he makes the argument that Trump lowered black unemployment to the lowest ever recorded, lowered Hispanic unemployment to the lowest it's ever been measured, that he did bring jobs back to the black community. You see the labor force participation going up. And if you looked online for ads, you saw more and more employers saying they accepted applications from people with criminal records. And I know employers who've tried to hire ex-convicts and that sort of thing. And all of that maybe was happening. And you see the wall being built. Okay, you know, Congress fought him on it, but he did the emergency declaration and he got the money into it and it's going up slowly. To my mind, and I look at it, I guess, the way Victor Davis Hanson does, to my mind, the tragedy is that you've got these inner cities burning now. And that woman we just heard from, talking about businesses that have set up now in the inner cities that will never go back there again. I mean, I'm watching this thing on television. I love cities. I know you like cities too. I think we met in New York City once. But I'm watching this. I'm the kind of person who likes to ride the train and the bus and hang out with people. And I'm thinking, I would never want these rioters as my neighbors, because that's who they are. It's, you know, yeah, I can talk about outsiders coming in, but you know, this is Union Square. This is not, you know, Harlem. These are the people, the rioters, the ones smashing the Apple Store are the ones who live on 14th Street. They're not the ones who live on 114th Street. So, you know, I say to myself, why would anyone want to live in a city? And I think they've killed the golden goose here.
I know. It's very sad, though. I mean, like I say, I think New York will be saved because rich and important people live there. And the New York City police were magnificent. I mean, they were making its first protest, first rock thrown. They were making arrest after arrest after arrest. God bless them. Even de Blasio can't keep them down. And look, I know. I know people are hanging on, and good and patriotic Americans who love their country and are terrified by what's going on are hanging on to Trump and hope in Trump like flotsam in after the sinking of the Titanic. So I don't really want to, I'm not in the mood for bursting your bubble. I'm pessimistic about what's going to happen for the next 4 years, and I hope things pick up. I will say one thing, just because it's driving me crazy that nobody remembers this. As for the highest black, or lowest black unemployment ever, the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever, we attacked Obama. I forget what year it was, but at some point during the Obama administration, probably right before the 2012 election. He must have needed to get the numbers up. He changed the definition of unemployment. Remember that? Whenever I say this to people, they tend to remember when that happened. He changed it so that you're not counted as unemployed if you've been looking for a job. He shortens the length of time before you're even in the numbers. So it's really the lowest unemployment numbers. It's very minor since, you know, the end of the Obama administration. What I'm talking about and what Trump was talking about during the campaign would have been a geyser of jobs. We wouldn't have to be, you know, arguing about it and looking at Bureau of Labor Statistics to figure out, oh, this one's up slightly here, this one's up slightly there. It would have been through the roof, both coronavirus and these riots. And, of course, there's the law and order piece, but instead of being a law and order Republican, which I knew this would happen. I mean, I said that before. I don't know if I explained what I meant I knew would happen. I mean, the change in America from the crime rates of the 1970s, 60s, 70s. First, Reagan came in, put a bunch of Reagan judges on the courts. Then you have, at the end of the decade, you get Giuliani coming in. Finally, we're stopped listening to the idiot criminology professors, and we're going to arrest and punish people who are committing crimes, mostly against that poor lady crying in the video. Crime rate went down overwhelmingly, and these idiot millennials living in Brooklyn have no idea. Brooklyn was unlivable. That was a no-go zone until Republican crime policies. But among the idiot millennials is, unfortunately, the advisor to the president, Jared Kushner, who had the great idea, no, instead of being tough on criminals, let's release them. And of course, as you know, writing for Breitbart, a lot of them have already recommitted crimes. And what I knew would happen was that, well, I used to say, as soon as Republicans leave the room, Democrats are going to come right back in and drive the crime rate back up again. Crime is, that is the most basic function of civil society. You cannot have a society, the way New York City has changed post-Giuliani and Bloomberg, bless him for continuing Giuliani's policies. You can't have life. You couldn't go for walks at night. You couldn't go to huge swaths of the city. The difference in life for people, and especially for people like that lady crying in the video, between no crime, locking up criminals, and not locking up criminals. But no, instead of getting that from Trump, Mr. Tough Guy, we get the First Step Act.
We will make America great